Hey everyone, I'm Danny Jack and welcome to my channel. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about what it is like to be a wedding photographer. So I've been a wedding photographer for about 5 years now, goes on around it. I think, we only see photography shooting at weddings and there's a lot of more which goes into it. So that's what the video is all about. I wanted to share what I'm doing when I'm not shooting a wedding and my own experiences, and also kind of debunk some of the myths around being a wedding photographer. So, if you're watching this, you may have shot a wedding yourself, or you might have a wedding coming up, or you might just want to know a little bit more about the industry itself. I think wedding photography is very different to your typical 9-to-5 job. I mean, yes, we shoot weddings on the weekends, but there's a lot more which goes into it than that. So I kind of want to talk about that side of things as well. I think depending on who you ask, people can say that wedding photography is a pretty glamorous job, it's pretty easygoing. Some people find it really stressful when they talk about, the bridezillas. So I'm just going to share my own experiences with you. I wanted to make this video for those who maybe are thinking about getting started in the industry. So if that's you and you find any of this helpful, please press like, please do the whole subscribe thing. I'd really appreciate it. Just for context, I shoot about 35 weddings a year. If you can't tell from my accent, I am based in the UK. I would probably say that's about middle of the road in terms of how busy we get as wedding photographers. Some people shoot maybe 20 weddings a year, some people shoot 50. Obviously, it totally depends. But yeah, I shoot 35. To help you guys out, I've broken this video down into 5 points, 5 different things I think are worth knowing about being a wedding photographer. So without any further ado, let's get into point number 1. So on the surface, wedding photography might not seem like a full-time gig. We're mostly working on the weekends, we're mostly working in summer, but I found in my own experience and talking with other wedding photographers as well, on the weekdays we are working constantly. We are marketing, we are looking after our clients, there's quite a lot that goes into it. So yeah, point number 1 is that wedding photography is quite a lot of work. So if you're thinking about getting into wedding photography, I'd probably say be prepared to do quite a bit of work. It's not all just taking pictures, obviously that is a part of it, but I think a chunk of your time is spent doing everything else, doing the marketing and trying to stand out and trying to improve your sales. So on the days you are shooting, you might be surprised at how much work that is as well. It's really fun having your camera and going around and capturing all these memories, but you're on your feet maybe 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 14, depending on what packages you offer. So that's also quite a lot of work. So I would recommend, making sure that you're prepared for that going in. I think a lot of people, when they first start shooting weddings, they throw themselves into that first wedding and then the next day they are wiped out. So yeah, it's a lot of effort. It's not only pretty physically tiring, but also pretty mentally tiring as well. When you're first getting started out, trying to remember all the different things you need to do, all the different photos you need to capture. That can be pretty tiring mentally. So the fortunate thing about that side of things is that as you get going and as you start shooting more weddings and getting more experience, it becomes easier, it becomes more natural, and you get better at responding to different circumstances. Having said all of that, and I don't want to scare you off, the flip side to it is that you do have total control. There's a lot to do, but apart from obviously the times when you're shooting a wedding, you have control over how you spend that time, when you choose to edit, when you choose to work on your marketing. So if you're after freedom, it's pretty good in terms of a week. You can control when you're doing what, and then fit the wedding work around your life, however you see fit. So if you want to take a day off or take a couple of days off or a week or whatever, you can totally do that. If you only want to shoot weddings maybe on certain months of the year, loads of wedding photographers do that as well. That's totally normal. Some of them only travel maybe during the winter months, or maybe they just don't shoot because they're doing a different job during winter. That's totally cool too. I think the idea of having total freedom to kind of create your own life, I think wedding photography is really well suited for people who want to maybe pursue different things and manage their own time. Obviously this takes time. I think when you're first starting out, you're constantly spinning plates, trying to get new leads and get new bookings. But once you've kind of got a system going, then the business, for the most part, starts to manage itself, and then you can start turning your interests, and turning your time to other things in your life, which is really cool. Point number 2, and I promise that this whole list is not full of negative things, but just getting the first 2 negative ones out of the way. I have to say that as far as living a social life goes, wedding photography is maybe not the most suited things for people who are really valuing their weekend time. Obviously we shoot weddings during the weekends and mostly during summer. So if your life heavily revolves around making the most of a weekend, if all of your family and friends mostly do stuff on the weekends, then there's a few changes you might have to make to how you spend your time. You know, you might miss a few barbecues, you might miss a few weekend getaways, and that's definitely no fun for anyone. You know, I try my best personally to book out time ahead of time to, you know, make sure that I'm making time for people's birthdays and you know, important weekend events. But the thing is that weddings get booked up maybe a year and a half, 2 years in advance. So if something springs on you last minute, if someone decides to suddenly go on a weekend holiday, you might miss out. That's kind of part of it. That's I guess, yeah, you have to kind of accept that. You can't let your clients down, you can't cancel on them to suddenly go on holiday. They've booked you, they've paid a deposit. So that is part of the business, and it's something that, yeah, does suck. There's no way of getting around that. But the flip side to this, apart from the times when you're booked, you have loads of freedom, you know. So if you don't have weddings booked in during the week, you can spend that time however you like. You know, I have a lot of friends who are creatives and photographers and wedding photographers, and this works really well for us because we can go and hang out on the weekdays, you know, and like going out on a Wednesday as opposed to like a Friday or Saturday. So that's a good reason, I suppose, to get involved in the community as well. And yeah, and it does work. You just have to kind of adjust and make time where you can, I suppose. It's also not the most social job in the world in terms of like how you're spending your time. You know, you are going to these big events, but unless you're working in a team, you probably don't know anyone there apart from the bride and groom. So you are kind of working solo. And then, you know, there's working from home, there's doing the editing and the marketing and all that stuff. Again, you're by yourself. So I would just make sure that, you know, when you're doing that, you just bear that in mind. The cool thing about it is that like the industry is really social. So, you know, there's a really good opportunity to meet other wedding photographers. And okay, you're not working with them, you are running your separate businesses. It just kind of feel like you're working together. You know, you can share ideas and you can talk with each other and you can go hang out and work on little projects together. So yeah, okay, so you're not technically working with other people, but you can kind of make it so it feels like it. This brings me on to point number 3, that the industry is massive. Like, I had no idea when I was first getting into wedding photography, like how many wedding photographers there are. Like, it almost feels like every photographer ever is a wedding photographer. I went to a convention once and there was just thousands of photographers there, like all working as wedding photographers. It was absolutely nuts. And it can get a little bit overwhelming. Like, the level of quality is insane. There are some wedding photographers out there who I would say are like the best, not just wedding photographers, but like the best photographers in the world. The level of skill is absolutely incredible. In fact, it gets to the point in the industry where it's almost kind of weird, where some wedding photographers have like almost like a celebrity-like status in the industry, which is crazy when you think about it, because like what other industry is like that? I would talk to like my partner or someone who doesn't work in the industry about certain photographers, like, oh my gosh, I just got to talk to so-and-so, and they have no idea who this person is, but like to us, like sometimes we see them as celebrities just because they're so good. It's really weird. I don't quite think that's healthy, but yeah, that's kind of what the industry is like. Yeah, it's absolutely massive. When I was first starting out, like seeing that huge industry and seeing the quality of the work people were producing, it was definitely like a little bit overwhelming. You couldn't help but compare yourself to others and see the way people did things, see the gear people were using, and like, yeah, you would look at someone else's work and you'd be like, well, I can never produce something like that. I think it's really important when working as a wedding photographer to stay grounded. The really cool thing about being in wedding photography is that everyone produces something different. Everyone's work is vastly different. There are so many different like sub-styles in wedding photography, which is really cool. So I would just advise you, like if you're first getting started out, to follow your own path. Maybe look at the industry for support, but don't, you know, follow it blindly. Don't get yourself down comparing yourself to others. And yeah, and just do things your way. You know, I have a lot of friends who are wedding photographers as well, and we help each other out, and it's a huge asset for me to be able to see people who are further ahead than I am, who can help me figure things out. But we don't shoot weddings the same way, our styles aren't the same, we aren't following the same path, we're just all helping each other out. And then finally, a word of warning before I move on, just like about people and stuff, is that there are those in the industry who, you know, are very protective about their egos, and they might see you doing things a certain way, and they might tell you that you're wrong, and they might try and bring you down. That's just a certain kind of person. I think we see that in like every industry. And I think the best thing to do is just to, you know, thank them for their advice, and then just move on. Do things your way, because chances are they're in a very fixed mindset and they're just very protective of what they're doing. Just wish them well, do your thing. So the next point is that you will enjoy wedding photography more the more you do it. a lot of wedding photographers will tell you that after they photographed their first wedding, they fell in love with it straight away. Like for me, it was quite different. Like I first started getting into wedding photography about 5 years ago, and I can remember like those 5 years ago, I knew there was something I loved about wedding photography, but also when I was actually shooting the wedding, like I wasn't really enjoying it. Like I was not having a great time. I think partly because I was trying to photograph in a way which I didn't love, like I was trying to shoot someone else's style, which made it not very fulfilling for me. But also like I was so nervous about doing a bad job. I was constantly questioning myself, and it just made it impossible to enjoy it. But as I started to shoot more and more weddings, as I got a bit more confident and I got used to things a bit more, then I could really start enjoying things. I could start experimenting. I could start, playing, pursuing my own style. And once I got to that point, it was way more enjoyable. So I think I'm living proof that if you're feeling like that when you're first starting out, try and stick with it a little bit longer. I definitely felt like that, and now I don't. Now I love it. Now I show up at a wedding, I'm still a little bit nervous, and I think that a little bit of nerves is a healthy thing. It means that you care about what you're doing. But now I'm at that point where I can rock up and I can shoot, and I know I'm going to be able to deliver, and I can just start playing and enjoying as I go along. And now I love photographing weddings. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you've started shooting weddings and it didn't quite live up to your expectations and you ended up not enjoying it, just stick with it a little bit more, get used to it until you can start relaxing into the process. And then if you still don't enjoy it then maybe try something new. But hopefully you'll start to love it. Finally, my last point, and I think we kind of briefly touched on this earlier, is that you'll be spending a lot more time than you think not taking photos. You would think it was the photographers who were most skilled with a camera who were getting the most bookings, ones who had honed their technical ability the best, who had the best wedding photography businesses. But I found, by getting to know the industry a bit more, that actually it was the ones who were spending their time working on things like their marketing and their branding. Everything which was not really in the world of photography per se, but in the world of business, who were really reaping the benefits of being a wedding photographer. And not to say that your skill and your craft is not incredibly important, of course it is, but you can't neglect everything else. You can't just assume that being good at photography is going to lead you to become a successful wedding photographer. You need to put time into everything else, all the other hats we wear as wedding photographers. Either you do it yourself or you delegate it to someone else, but you can't neglect that part of the craft as well. So that's just something else which I think maybe people don't know about being a wedding photographer, that the running of a business is equally, if not more important than the actual photos themselves. So that's it for me. That is a brief overview of what it is like to be a wedding photographer. I will end on a note that obviously it is awesome to be a wedding photographer. I would recommend it to everyone. I guess it's not for everyone. You have to kind of ask yourself those questions like, does this fit into my life plan? Does it fit into my lifestyle? But if it does, if you are okay with working in the weekends and having that free time the rest of the week and having some time to maybe go traveling and stuff like that, then I think it's a fantastic career. I love that it's ever changing. I love that it's ever progressing and people are getting better and better all the time and coming up with new ideas. And I love that you can, pursue the craft in your own way, and you can create your own art, and chances are there's someone out there who will love that art and they will want to book you for their wedding. So that's it for me. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. If you liked the video, then press like, maybe press subscribe and you can see the next one. I plan on making videos every week, maybe 2 a week, on photography, creativity, productivity, all the general things I enjoy talking about. That's it for me. Thank you very much, and I will see you on the next one.